Welcome to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast, where green practices meet profitable solutions. Join us as we uncover the latest trends in eco-friendly hospitality that not only safeguard our planet, but also drive down operating costs and boost revenue. Every week, we will bring you compelling conversations with industry leaders who are at the forefront of merging sustainability with economic success. Whether you're a hotelier, a resort manager, or a passionate traveler, this is your gateway to the future of sustainable hospitality. Tune in and let's explore how going green is good for both the earth and your bottom line. We're your hosts, Amy Wald and Kathy McGuire.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. We are delighted to have Ken Daugherty with us today. He's going to speak about food waste prevention in a hotel environment. He's a professional with 43 plus years experience in the resort industry. Welcome, Ken. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Kathy.
Terrific. Well, let's dive right into it. So, how did you get started with this food waste prevention priority that you found in hotels? How did that all come to be?
Well, about 12 years ago, I returned to a property that I opened back in 1993, and we were having a charter associates lunch, and that was every associate that had been here since 1993. And when I went in the back after the lunch, I was going through the hot boxes and such in the kitchen, and boy, there was a lot of leftover food. And so we got together with our team and said, "Hey, look, you know what? This is something that we've seen, not just here, but in many resorts that I've worked in and that others have worked in. Our food and beverage director had worked in and such." And so we got together and we said, "Well, how do we deal with this issue of overproduction? Because that's really where food waste stems from." So then, Kathy, what we did is we got together and we said, "Look, this is an issue that hotels seem to have. You know, we're certainly a guest-centric industry. We want to do what's best for our guests, but almost every hotel out there during the sales process will say, look, we'll produce 10% over just to assure that everybody receives the same meal and so on and so forth." We said, well, we can assure that people get the same meal, but we don't need to always produce 10% over. So there's many facets to what we did, but we started there. And so what we did is we got together with the chef, we got together with our banquet team, our food and beverage director took point on the initiative. And we said, look, if we're going to serve 150 people, first of all, we're going to write menus to be able to handle this, but we're going to fire food for about 100, 110, 120, depending on what we know about the group in terms of their eating habits and such, because you learn a lot after the first meal. So, and then the banquet captain's job is to continually come back to the banquet chef and, hey, let's fire some more. Let's fire some more of this. Let's fire less of this. Let's hold off. They're not big eaters. And that was the start. But we got together with our entire team, which meant from our sales team down, our conference planners, the people that really are meeting with the group leaders to put their meals together. And we all the way through our culinary, through our purchasing department, and even our engineering department had a seat at the table because, you know, engineering, it's important that everything runs. You know, if you've been in the business long enough, you've lost a cooler full of food at some point, you know, because the walk-in went down and you didn't know it. So
I want to jump in here real quick because this is so important. I think this is the number one thing that's important is bringing all the stakeholders in, everybody within the hotel that has any kind of influence, whether positive or negative, on this process has to be involved And I think that's one with sustainability in general. I think that's one of the big problems is that one department's going to do something, but they're not gathering in other people that can affect the success of what they're trying to do. So please continue.
Sure, absolutely. So to that vein, we started with sales. And we said we are no longer going to tell our guests that we're going to overproduce for them. What we did was we changed our verbiage and we said, hey, look, food waste is a worldwide issue. And this is what our property is doing in order to minimize food waste. We found that the message was really well received. They loved being part of that. They loved to be able to tell people, hey, look at this, when we go to this property, this is what we can expect, and this is how they handle it. And so they really enjoyed that message. On the culinary side, we made sure that we had menus that we could achieve that had shorter fire times, so we could react as we moved through a banquet or meal period. So that's one thing that we did. We also we learned a lot from a company that owned and managed this years ago, where they had what we called a complete meeting package. And within that complete meeting package, we typically would have our guests, corporate guests, group guests, eat in our dining outlets. And of course, we had a large dining room. But when you think about how we produce food, and you've got 5 or 6 groups in-house, and they're going to lunch between 11 and 12 typically, then your prep and your mise en place is one menu versus having 5 different menus. And so you can see that you can save by just focusing on one menu versus 5, because you're going to have some leftovers. And so if you're going to minimize that by just having one menu. Then we said, you know what, this is pretty successful. So what we're going to do, because we can't feed every group and it doesn't make sense to feed every group in your dining room or your outlets, because they might have a speaker, they might have, various things that would keep them from doing that. But we said, let's put together some rotational menus. So Monday breakfast, Tuesday's a little different, Wednesday's different, and Thursdays, so on and so forth. So you have rotational menus. So everyone really, whether they're a 300-person association group or a 50-person corporate group, they're basically eating the same food. So it's the same idea of minimizing or streamlining your prep to one menu versus multiple. And I remember coming into work one day and I said, gosh, we've got 10 corporate groups in-house right now, and they're all eating 10 different menus. 10 different menus. Why is that? Well, the reason is because we gave them a menu and that's what they chose. And so we got together with our conference planning team and they said, well, we can sell this better. We can do these rotational menus. And they put the menus together with the culinary team. They brought them back. And what we found is our conference, the meeting planners from the various groups said, you mean I don't have to plan breakfast and lunch for every one of our meal periods? We'd love it. And when they do want something, and when they do want something a little different or special, the answer is yes. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that for you. And, but we've had so much success with being able to bring these menus together and just have rotational menus throughout. Another important thing that in purchasing, our purchasing manager, he would know our banquet event orders. He knew exactly what we're going to be producing every day. And as most hotels do, we have what I would call a commissary or a warehouse that has or storeroom that has your, some walk-in coolers and where you receive your food and you move it to the prep kitchen, on a daily basis. Well, he would, when he'd come in every morning, he would grab his cart, he would go to the production kitchen and he'd pull back anything that they that the culinary team requisitioned that they didn't need up there. And that was a really important step for us, and one that I would encourage everyone to really look at, because if you've got it up in production and you're in purchasing and you're doing your daily inventory to see what you need, you may not need what you think you need because there's so much of it upstairs in your production kitchen. So that was a big part of our overall initiative, is that right there. So
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I haven't worked in kitchens, although I've worked in a hotel. What do you mean by that? You moving food, the
so
production area, moving, what do you mean by that?
okay, so I call our main storeroom where we receive our food off of the produce trucks and the seafood trucks and the meat trucks and such, coffee, everything. I call that a commissary. So it comes in, we temp everything as it comes in. We rotate and we store everything in that main storeroom. And typically, the culinary team will requisition product from that storeroom up into their
Mhm.
production kitchen. So, you've got in your kitchen, you'll typically have your restaurants and you'll have your banquet operation, your room service operation, so on and so forth, your pastry shop, etc. So that food moves from your main storeroom to the production kitchen. And
Okay.
if we over requisition, and I've cooked for many years, and I've wanted to make sure I had what I needed at my fingertips. I didn't want to have to run to the main storeroom to get it.
Ah, I get
And
it.
so he took that as part of his job to move product back, so we didn't have more product upstairs than we needed, or up in the production kitchen than we needed.
Mhm.
So, and what that really does is it gives him a better understanding of what we actually have product wise, so he's not over ordering, because he might have to say 2 cases of romaine upstairs. Well,
Mhm.
that's all he really needs, but he's out downstairs, so he's going to order 2 more. Well, he may not need those 2 cases.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So what else did you do?
Well, those are the main components
Mhm.
of the plan. But you know what? When we first started this entire initiative, we looked at our entire company and we said, okay, where do we fit in, from a food cost standpoint? And I think this is an important point, because we never set out to reduce food cost, and our food cost was right in there with everybody else. We were at like a 27% food cost, 26.5, something like that. And these initiatives took us some time, just one at a time, in implementing. So over the course of a couple of years, we started seeing that food cost drop. And I mean dramatically, like 1%, 1%, 1%. And we were so used to, and I think most hotels, resorts are used to saying, okay, well, this is what our food cost should be. But this is really how we gauge the results of our program, because we didn't go through any real analytics of, hey, let's just make sure that we're measuring our waste, and we're um, trying to somehow calculate that we're seeing less waste. Where it
Mhm.
showed up was in our food cost. And
Oh,
so over the years, we went from like 27% down, and we stabilized right at 20. Well, to us, that's a lot in terms of percentage, but for us, it was just under $900,000 a year
oh, holy
in
cow.
in 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 food cost savings. And it was all because of this initiative. And we were buying great quality. We had wonderful food products. We didn't skimp on anything. We just got focused on reducing food waste. And it worked. And I think it mostly worked because, back to your earlier point, we got the entire team together. They
Mhm.
rallied around it. They said, I think we can make a difference here. And it not at no point were we saying, hey, we want to improve our food costs. We were just saying, look, we want to stop overproducing. And I think it's pretty normal for hotels when they have a food cost issue. Let's say food cost jumps up 3 points. It's like, okay, what's the problem? Then you turn it into more of an accounting issue. It's how our inventory's good. How are we pricing? What's our portion control? How are we buying? Are we doing a good job in the purchasing processes and such? Those things are all important. I call it the blocking and tackling of food costs. But where it always is, it's in overproduction. That's always the issue. It's rarely that my recipes aren't costed correctly. I'm not priced correctly. If you're doing that kind of work, then you can't just say, well, let's look in the trash. Let's see what we're overproducing in the trash, because it doesn't all show up there. So if you think about the one simple point, which is if you prepare some food and you do not get full retail value, it's going to affect your food costs. It's simple math. And so focusing on not overproducing is critical. That's where it always is.
Right. Well, so let me ask you this. Did you do any kind of shared break areas where you might have several groups in house? You put the break area in one place for all of them because they usually come out around the same time or whatever, and share in that way?
Absolutely. We did do that. We called it a continuous break. And that, we didn't even sell individual break stations. We would provide that if somebody asked for it, but we would typically just do the continuous break, which every group could participate in it. One of the many things that chefs do well these days is just their presentations. And we can do really cool single servings of various things that people would want on a break station. So that contributes greatly. And one of the other things that we found out is that they will have, let's say they have breakfast their first day and they show up for breakfast. And then they go down and they see this robust break and they say, well, geez, tomorrow I'm going to go for a run. I'll probably go ahead and skip breakfast because I already have yogurt. I have fresh berries. I've got bagels, just about anything that you would want. And they'll just grab that right before the meeting and go in and have that. So, and that's just another benefit of that continuous break station.
I can't tell you how many break stations I have seen that are just overloaded with things that cannot be resold. Or I mean, it's like if you put a great big bowl of grapes on the table and nobody's eating them, it has to be thrown out, because of
Exactly.
sanitation, hygiene, and things like that. So it's so wasteful. Let me ask you this. I was interviewing a chef who is a professor at a local university here. He teaches the culinary students. And he was talking about how, like, if they had some pastries out for breakfast, whatever was left over there, he would make a bread pudding. So it's like repurposing food. Or they'd take the carrot scrapings and they would kind of make a carrot cake with it, things like that. Have you experienced that as well?
We have our rule was once it went out and was on the buffet that we would not use it again. So that's where we were really careful of not putting out the big bowl of grapes or putting out the big display in that manner. And that's where I think that chefs and food and beverage teams have gotten really good these days at putting together those individual, it could be, some crudité and a little glass vessel with some dressing in it. Just simple things like that. Some little
Little
portions of
bites.
fresh berries. Yeah.
Small
And so
bites.
then you can put things out as needed, and you can do elevations and things like that to make that table look really great and to keep
Yeah.
everything else in the back. Plus, you can use um, those types of items in your outlets and such well if you're creative, and you can get that built into your menu, because you can go into a bar, into your lounge, and all of those little snack items just go perfectly with the lounge experience. So
Oh, that's great. And I was thinking about a local, seasonal, that type of thing, although that's not necessarily, well, it's still cost effective and does reduce transportation, greenhouse gas emissions, and all those things. But for example, somebody says, oh, we want to serve salmon. Well, if you're in Florida, you got to ship that from really far away. So having your catering professionals, your salespeople interact with those group meeting planners saying, well, why don't we can give you a tasting. They said, we've got this great Florida fish here, and we've got, strawberries are in season. We don't want to go get apples from New York when we've got all these oranges and fresh strawberries, kinds of thing, kind of leading them toward, and maybe only offering that and saying, yeah, I understand you want the salmon, but here's what we can do instead. Do you find that people are open to selling in that way?
yes, and I think it's our job to lead and to create our menus that way. But I also believe that when people go to different regions of the US, that's the food they want. They don't want the food from where they're from. If I go to Florida, I
Mm.
want some of that great seafood that I know that I'm going to get in Florida that I cannot get in the Pacific Northwest. It's just a different great seafood in the Pacific Northwest. So
Yeah. I actually didn't think about that, about people wanting, so whenever I go anywhere, I want to eat the local food, especially any kind of ethnic food I love. So yeah, I mean, I don't want a hamburger or a, fish sandwich from Florida if I'm somewhere else. So that makes a lot of sense. So are there any other, I mean, you didn't start out to save money. It was a food waste issue, but it wound up being a win-win. But it's not something that a hotel could like market. Oh, we've saved $900,000 this year on food costs. Well, people don't care about that. But what they
uh,
care about is, what? We have prevented all of this food. Here's how much. So what do you think the value would be in starting to measure, you know, food waste, and say that we're within acceptable limits, there's like 2% is going to be wasted if you're doing a really good job, something like that.
yeah, it's a really good idea, and it's really it could be fairly simple in that it's almost semantics. They might not care about your food costs, but we could say we saved this much money in food purchasing this year because of our significant efforts in managing food waste. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it, and that way you're not pointing out, hey, look, you helped us save a lot of money.
Right. Is here we, and at some point you can kind of estimate your wastage, because what you're also saving money on is the hauling away of your compactor, because food waste is heavy because it's, really water heavy. So you'll have less in your compactor. And it's if you have a compactor, if a hotel does have one, they're large enough to have one of those, it's measured in weight. It's not like just a charge for a container,
Correct.
that gets flipped over the truck, a smaller container. So though you save money there as well. But I think for the public, if you said, oh, we measured like, for example, if you had a group and you said, hey, how about for this group, we measure the food waste from our prep and from what is being thrown away. I would think that would be kind of like a fun thing for a group to say, oh, yeah, let's participate in this. Let's not take more from the buffet than we're going to eat. We can always go back for seconds, and let's make it a challenge. So let's see how much food we cannot waste.
Absolutely. And many kitchens, including, the resort that I'm talking about, will have bins just for food waste, food scraps, food only. And some properties have digesters. Some
Mhm.
properties have enough land where you can compost correctly. And some properties have companies that will come out and get it and turn it into compost out on a farm, as well. So that costs a little bit of money, but it's certainly well worth it, because as you pointed out, garbage is not cheap. And there's so much water, in your garbage, it costs a lot of money. So.
That's exactly right. And I do think in trying to get, lots of people on board with doing things like this is it seems to me, my experience, that whatever it is, if it's got a marketing value to it, like you can promote yourself, hey, this is what we do. We prevent food waste. We have a strict program in place, and this is how we do it, and this is the result. So I would like to encourage hotels to actually measure that food waste and have a story to tell about it and engage those groups in participating in that like a challenge.
Right, right.
Yeah. Terrific. Well, Ken, this has been very educational. I'm so glad you joined us to talk about this. There are many things I learned that I didn't know, and I thought I knew a lot. So I appreciate it very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, well, we appreciate it very much. Ken Daugherty, a hospitality professional, 43 plus years. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for tuning back into the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. Keep the conversation going and visit the contact page at greenluxinc.com and sign up for our monthly newsletter, where we will bring you the latest developments and breaking news in sustainable hospitality and tourism. That's www.greenluxeinc.com. And if you're ready to start your sustainability journey and would like some help on knowing what that could look like, book a complimentary call with us today. Until our next episode, remember, sustainability is your ticket to a healthier planet and a healthier bottom line. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review.